When you look back through human history, conflict seems to be a constant, right? But the reasons were usually given, things like glory, religion, or big ideologies, they don't always feel like the whole story. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a powerful, hidden blueprint that suggests many wars are really about one thing: economics.
So let's just ask the big question right up front, the one that has shaped so much of our world. Why do nations actually go to war? And we've all heard the standard answers in school. We're taught that wars are fought for these really noble ideas like freedom, or for deep religious beliefs, or just plain old national pride. And look, those things are definitely part of the equation, but they aren't always the full story. What if there's something else going on, just beneath the surface? A kind of hidden economic blueprint that's driven not by abstract ideas, but by something way more concrete: money, resources, and control. A pattern that might just be the main engine of conflict, going all the way back to the dawn of civilization. So let's pop the hood on that unseen engine. In this explainer, we're going to explore how the constant hunt for economic power has set the stage for some of humanity's biggest and most destructive conflicts. So, this economic blueprint, it pretty much operates on three simple rules of the game. These rules really help explain how resources and the pursuit of wealth can lead pretty directly to war. Let's break them down.
Okay, rule number one is scarcity. The best way to think about this is like a historical pressure cooker. When you have a society that has more people than it can feed or support with the land and water it has, well, the need to get those resources from somewhere else becomes this incredibly powerful, almost primal reason for conflict. We're not just talking about wanting more stuff, we're talking about basic survival.
Next up, we've got a really interesting paradox. You'd think that stumbling upon a mountain of gold or a giant lake of oil would be the best thing that could ever happen to a country, right? Well, history often shows us the exact opposite. It's something called the resource curse, where all that easy money actually ends up fueling corruption and bitter power struggles, making a nation less stable, not more. Kind of crazy.
And the third rule is geopolitics. Now, this is a simple but really profound idea that power isn't just about what you have, it's all about where you are. If you can control a strategic piece of land, a critical port, or a narrow sea lane, you control the flow of trade and wealth. It's basically the ultimate game of real estate, and the prize is global dominance.
Okay, so those are the rules of the blueprint. Now let's see how they actually work in the real world by digging into the historical evidence. How have these economic drivers really played out over the centuries? And this timeline just lays it out so clearly. I mean, look at this pattern. In the ancient world, it was all about fighting over fertile river valleys. Then, in the Bronze Age, you had to have copper and tin to make the best weapons. Rome absolutely needed grain from North Africa to survive. The colonial empires were built on gold and sugar from the Americas. And of course, the modern era has been completely dominated by the global scramble for oil. The resource changes, but that core motivation, securing economic assets by force, that stays exactly the same. Now here's the twist. It's not always about controlling the resource at its source. Sometimes it's even more powerful and profitable to control the roads and sea lanes that all that wealth travels on, basically the arteries of global trade. And it doesn't matter if it's on land or at sea, the logic is pretty much identical. On land, you had empires fighting to control key cities along trade routes like the Silk Road, so they could put a toll on every caravan that passed through. At sea, the great naval powers fought to control strategic choke points, those narrow passages like the Suez Canal where all the ships have to go. In both cases, the goal was simple: become the gatekeeper of global trade and get rich. And what this does is it creates this simple but incredibly powerful feedback loop. Step 1, you seize control of a route. Step 2, you tax all the traffic that goes through it. Step 3, you take all that money and funnel it into your treasury. And step 4, you use that new wealth to build up your armies and project power, which lets you go out and seize even more routes. It's the classic recipe for building an empire. So, we've gone through the theories, we've looked at the history, but you might be wondering, does this blueprint still apply today in our super modern globalized world? The answer is 100% yes. This isn't just some dusty old story from a textbook. The same core drivers that pushed Rome to expand are absolutely just as relevant today. The players have changed, the technology's changed, but the game is still the same. I mean, just look at the world's biggest geopolitical tensions right now. All those arguments over oil and gas pipelines, those are modern-day trade route wars. The need to protect global supply chains, that's about controlling the economic lifeblood of nations. And all the fighting over freedom of navigation, that's just a modern struggle to control those same strategic choke points. The blueprint is definitely still in use.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought here. This economic blueprint, it's not a static document. It's always evolving. So the real question for us to think about is, what comes next? Are the future wars going to be fought over control of data flows, or the rare earth minerals that we need for all our electronics, or maybe even something as basic as fresh water? If we can understand this hidden blueprint from the past, we have a much better shot at understanding not just our history, but the potential conflicts of our future.